Hey man, Shane here. There's a fear that if you bulk, you'll get fat, and the fat will be ugly, and your physique will be ruined, damaged beyond repair. The worst example of this I've seen is this short from Sean Nalewany. I'm not trying to hate on Sean, I've heard that he's normally pretty reasonable, but I think he was wrong back then when he was bulking this way, and that he's even more wrong now when he's warning people about it. I'll get to that in a second. There's another mystery we need to solve first. When we eat extra food, we could spend the extra energy, or we could invest it into muscle growth, or we could package it up and store it in our fat cells. Even better if we're eating a nutritious diet, allowing us to store more micronutrients along with the fat. Sort of like meal prepping a bunch of healthy meals and putting them into the freezer for later. The reason we go through the effort of storing the fat is because fat is energy, and energy is incredibly useful. A single pound of body fat gives you enough energy to chase down a gazelle and then carry it back home. Even if you fail, you'd still have enough energy left over to try again the next day. It's an amazingly efficient source of fuel. If you're quite lean, let's say 15% body fat, then you've got something like 25 pounds of fat on your body. That's almost 100,000 calories. That's enough energy to live a hunter-gatherer lifestyle for weeks, even if you can't find any food at all. If a famine strikes, it's better to have even more energy than that. That way, you can nibble on bark and burn through body fat until you can find food again. That isn't the mystery. Body fat is enormously useful. It's good to have an abundance of it. The mystery is that if it's so obviously so valuable, then why don't we like how it looks? In some cases, we do like how it looks. Most guys like the look of breasts and butts and hips and thighs. We know what it feels like to be attracted to healthy reserves of energy. Some women don't understand that, and they think that they need to be super thin to be attractive, and sometimes that desire to be thin can become pathological. But from an outside perspective, we understand the value. We feel the attractive pull of the body fat. We're men though, and our bodies are different, and we wouldn't make a mistake like that. We benefit from being stronger and running further and being more nimble. Having an abundance of muscle and fat is great, but not if it weighs us down to the point where we can't catch anything. So maybe it pays to balance strength and fuel with being lighter on our feet. Maybe even though fat is a powerful source of useful fuel, we still look better when we're leaner. The trouble comes when we try to prove it. The most infamous example of this confusion is the Ollie Murr controversy, but I already covered that in this other video. I'll show you the Sean Nalewanyj version of that too, but I want to talk about this example first. I drew a skinny guy, and then I drew another guy with some extra muscle, but quite a lot of extra fat. This is way more fat than you would need to gain while bulking, but I wanted to capture that fear of a bulk gone horribly wrong. When I showed women these two physiques, 83% of them said they preferred the bulkier guy. My wife is one of those women who thinks that the bulkier guy looks better. It's weird though because she grew up here in Cancun. It's a beach culture here. Everyone wants abs, including her. So why did she choose the fatter guy? I asked her why she likes the look of abs, and she said that bigger abs are stronger abs. That's an answer to a different question though. If bigger abs is the goal, then bulking is the best way to build bigger abs, so bulking is the way. And it's true, this fatter guy does have bigger abs under there. But that isn't what people are talking about when they're talking about abs. We're talking about body fat. We're talking about burning off the fat to expose the abs underneath, whatever size they are. She told me that she understood what I was asking, but she explained that the cool thing about leanness is that it's easier to see someone's muscles. So, if someone has abs that look strong and athletic, then it's nice to see them. Same with all muscles. That's why leanness looks cool. It's not that fat is bad, it's that muscles are even cooler. My wife doesn't actually know why she likes abs or why she wants to have them. She's taking a gut instinct and then she's inventing an explanation for why it might be. She's backwards rationalizing. But if she's right, it would explain why people prefer the look of the bulkier guy over the skinny guy. It all fits in with an idea of physical capability and energy. In this case, the skinny guy has a greater reserve of energy than the bulkier guy, suggesting that he's more resourceful and tougher. More resourceful in the sense that he clearly knows where to find extra food, and tougher in the sense that if he needs to go through a period without food, he would be more likely to survive. And that's great. What's less great is that it's hard to tell how strong he is. His body fat is obscuring his muscles. If he isn't very strong, then it's probably better to hide that weakness under the covering of the body fat. But if he is strong, then he might look even better if he burned off the extra body fat to show off that strength. And so you would expect a guy who's even stronger and even leaner to do even better. For example, in this survey, women were turned off by the steroidy looking guys, and they didn't prefer an unhealthy amount of body fat, but Seb did great, and Spencer did even better, presumably because he looks strong and athletic. I realize Spencer doesn't look as strong as some natural bodybuilders, but he really is genuinely strong. Here he is repping 2 plates on the bench press, pretty easily too. This is the sort of physique that looks like it could run down a buffalo and swing a sword through it. If there are no buffalo around, he looks like he could lead a cattle raid against his enemies. And if there are no enemies around, he can burn some of his extra muscle for energy. He's showcasing an abundance of both energy and capability. If I'm right, then it would explain why skinny guys tend to look better when they gain muscle or fat or both. And it would also explain why most of us would prefer to be even leaner and even stronger. Just not so strong that it robs us of our strength and agility, and definitely not to the point where it starts to imply drug abuse or vanity or obsession or any of those negative psychological traits. The peak physique then might be something like a martial artist or an American football player or a javelin thrower or an Italian Olympic swimmer. Maybe a BMI of 23 to 27. Maybe a body fat percentage of 10 to 20%, somewhere between a buffalo runner and a cattle raider. The main researcher who studies this stuff is Dr. Aaron Sell. He found that strength explains 70% of the difference in physique attractiveness between men, which means that getting stronger is way more important than staying lean, at least when you're getting stronger in a healthy way, and at least when you're keeping healthy levels of body fat. I asked Aaron about this idea of fat looking good, but muscle looking even better, thus giving the advantage to strong guys with nice muscle definition. He said it was plausible, but he didn't know. In the past, we didn't have the ability to hoard such tremendous amounts of energy. Maybe at a certain point, fat starts to look bad because it starts to look strange. Sort of like how guys on steroids start to look strange, with their strangely big muscles and oversized organs. It could be that obesity is throwing off our barbarian wiring in that same way. Maybe that's why, at a certain point, once we pass beyond the abnormal threshold, fat starts to look bad. I think this gives us a framework we can work with. If you're skinny, then bulking is pure benefit, even if your gains aren't perfectly lean. Whereas if you're strong, then you can show off that strength by burning off your veil of fat. However, you wouldn't want to push your muscularity or body fat so high that it stops being athletic and healthy. That's where Sean's warning comes in. According to him, if you're a skinny guy and if you aren't very careful, then after a few short months of bulking, you might wind up looking like this. I want to quickly knock out some of the biggest bulking fears. The first is that if you gain fat while bulking, then you might cause your fat cells to multiply, which will make it harder to stay lean in the future. Thankfully, that doesn't happen. The average person gets much fatter than any bulker ever should, and even then, they don't tend to gain any new fat cells. So there's no reason to think that we would. We're well below that threshold. Gaining fat cells isn't really a thing in the bulking niche either. You don't really see it. People who bulk up tend to find it easier to be lean afterwards. When you bulk up to a heavier body weight, what tends to happen is that you rebound down a little bit afterwards. Your body weight tries to come back down closer to where it was before. So, if you bulk up and you gain a bunch of muscle and fat, and you keep lifting weights, and you keep living a healthy lifestyle, then that's more than enough to maintain the muscle you gained, and any weight you lose will be pure fat. The fat usually burns itself off without you even needing to try. That's what we usually see with clients, especially when they're naturally thin. The second fear is that bulking has a high risk of making you fat. Not in a permanent way, not in the sense that it would ruin your physique, but in a way that would make you look temporarily bad. That isn't quite right either. My earlier bulks were both aggressive and lean, as you can see here. I didn't really gain a noticeable amount of fat, but I eventually ran out of newbie gains and I did eventually start gaining some fat. Here's a bulk from 7 years ago when I was 30. I was working towards a 315-pound bench press, and I knew I was bulking too aggressively, much faster than Sean recommends. but I wasn't tracking calories and I wanted to err on the side of gaining a bit too quickly. I was focusing on getting stronger, not on keeping lean, and I knew that I had plenty of room to gain fat before it would start negatively impacting my health. I wasn't really worried about it. You can see that my body fat percentage clearly went up, but gaining fat doesn't mean getting fat. I was still healthfully lean by the end of it, and I got the 315 bench I wanted. You could think of the fat I gained as a necessary evil. I was bulking too quickly and too casually, so I had to pay the price of gaining this unwanted body fat. But I didn't think of it that way. I was happy to have the extra fat. I had saved up all of these meals in my fat cells, and so when I finished bulking and I hit my strength goal, I got to take a proper vacation from overeating. Having that extra fat meant that I could skip breakfast when I wasn't hungry, and my body fat would pay the calorie bill. Instead of skipping breakfast, losing weight, and getting weaker, I had a reserve of body fat, so I could skip breakfast, lose weight, and get leaner. Another concern is that your face will gain some fat, and my face did gain some fat, but not in a way that looked bad to me or my wife, and I don't think anybody else minded either. And I used the bulk as an opportunity to thicken up my neck, which definitely made my face look better, especially to me. I was really happy with this, and I got some compliments for it too. Young guys often assume that if they gain fat, then it will make their face more bloated and it will cover up their jawline, and that can be true, especially if you gain a lot of fat, but there's a balance to it. I think part of the reason women found Ollie Murs more attractive when he was more bulked up is because his face looked healthier. It's also pretty common for people to talk about Ozempic face, where people get so lean that their faces become gaunt and they look less healthy. As a general rule, our faces tend to look best when we focus less on being lean, more on being strong, athletic, and healthy. Even better if you bulk up and then settle back down to a more natural body fat percentage, like this. However, some people do bulk in more extreme ways on purpose, and in those more extreme cases, it can indeed cause problems, which brings us to Sean's bulk. Sean has a few extremely popular videos where he makes fun of himself for getting fat, but before he posted those videos, he posted this old photo of himself, back from when he was halfway through his bulking phase of life, after having gained about 25 pounds of extra fat. I'm guessing he's already north of 20% body fat here. What's interesting is that if you look through the comments, all of them are telling him how awesome he looks with the extra fat. Most of the comments were from guys who thought he looked cool, but there was one comment from a woman and she told him that he looked better with the extra fat, better than he does now with abs. You don't need to agree that he looks cool here, but it's a strong, masculine, unfussy sort of look, and a lot of people really do prefer that over the fitness model aesthetic he has right now. I wouldn't think of one as being better than the other though. It depends, and you'll probably have a better time becoming strong and healthy if you like the look of both. When you're trying to get stronger, you can let yourself get bigger without stressing about it. And then if you're trying to get better at cardio, like running, you can let yourself get lighter without needing to stress about that either. This is the photo he uses to warn people against the dangers of bulking too quickly. He weighs 227 pounds at a height of 5'9", giving him a BMI of 33. That's another 27 pounds of fat on top of the physique that earned him all of those compliments, and it's 52 pounds heavier than he weighs right now. I wouldn't recommend taking your bulk anywhere near this far, but we know it didn't ruin his physique because we know what he looks like now. He looks great. Even if you pushed your bulk this far, the fear is still exaggerated. You would still be okay. Your physique still wouldn't be ruined. There are a couple of other problems too. Sean says he got this way because he was eating too much junk food and gaining weight too quickly. I don't think that's correct. If he had been eating a healthier diet, I'm confident he still would have gained just as much body fat. It isn't just junk food that causes fat gain. Our bodies are also perfectly capable of getting energy from healthy foods. When I bulked up and gained fat, all of that fat came from healthy food. That's a normal thing. People have been happily storing body fat since long before farming existed, let alone junk food. The benefit of bulking on a healthier diet is that it's healthier. You'll be able to bulk with more energy and clearer skin, better blood flow, bigger muscle pumps, while adding years to your lifespan. Health is amazing. That's why you would want to eat healthier food, not to avoid fat gain. Also, it's unclear if weight gainers are unhealthy. Probably not if you're using them correctly, but that's a whole other topic. It's also possible to build muscle leanly while eating modern processed foods. Sean blames weight gainer shakes for his fat gain, but the research is clear that under the right circumstances, weight gainers can give you very lean gains. For example, during my second bulk, when I was drinking weight gainer shakes, I got faster, leaner gains than during my more recent bulk, when I was eating a perfectly clean diet made up entirely of whole foods. Bulking more slowly couldn't have saved Sean from his fat gains either. It is often wise to bulk more slowly, especially if you're skinny fat or if you have a history of being fat, or if you're more advanced and you're expecting a slower rate of muscle growth. In those cases, then bulking slowly can help to keep your gains leaner. No problem there. Speed wasn't what got him though. I think 227 pounds is just too far beyond his muscular potential. He was trying to get too big, with a dream of building more muscle than his frame could possibly support. I think if he took all of his wisdom and he bulked back up to 227 pounds very slowly and very cleanly, eating a perfect diet, he would wind up right back where he was, with a similar amount of body fat. I think Sean would agree with me too. He talks about that problem here.
Most naturals don't have the frame to be 200 pounds lean and will just end up fat, sweaty, and bloated trying to force feed their way to some random number on the scale. Aggressive bulking might give you a temporary ego boost when you confuse the fat and water retention for muscle, but that illusion will quickly come crashing down once you cut and realize the 12 pounds of muscle you thought you gained was actually closer to 2.
But even here, where he's correctly identified the problem, the solution still isn't quite right. If you're skinny, then your frame isn't anywhere close to full yet, so you can get away with bulking quite aggressively, and you can make lean gains, and those gains will be healthy. They'll be great. That doesn't mean you have to do it. Slow bulking can be great, even if you're skinny, but bulking slowly wouldn't have prevented Sean's fat gain. He's mixing different problems together. There's a simple solution to all of this. I have a full bulking guide video here, including how to bulk if you're skinny, and there's one point I want to highlight. First thing in the morning, on an empty stomach, at the height of your belly button, measure your waist circumference. A waist circumference of half your height or less is perfect. So if you're 180 centimeters tall, you would want a waist circumference of 90 centimeters or less. If your waist is naturally very thin, then you can lower that threshold a little bit. You can take off a couple of centimeters. If your waist is naturally very thick, you can add a couple of centimeters to it. But if you're within that neighborhood, then you're doing great. That means that if you're midway through a bulk and you're starting to stress that you're getting a little bit fat, but your waist circumference is still doing well, then you don't need to worry about it. You're doing good. You're doing good for your health, good for your appearance. On the other hand, if you're partway through a bulk and you notice that your waist circumference has climbed beyond that threshold, then that might be a reason to stop your bulk early. The reason I recommend tracking your waist circumference instead of your body fat percentage is that there isn't a good way to track your body fat percentage. DEXA isn't accurate enough to track small changes in body composition, and it isn't even always directionally correct. A DEXA scan might tell you that you're gaining fat when in reality you're losing it. The BIA scales you can use at home are even worse. And if you're trying to guess your body fat percentage visually, then your mind can start playing tricks on you, making you think that you're gaining pure muscle, or the opposite, making you think that you're gaining pure fat. Waist circumference is easier to measure, the number you get is more reliable, and it measures the most important type of fat, visceral fat, the fat around your organs, which is the type of fat that causes health problems. If your waist circumference is less than half your height, you're being fully responsible. There's no risk of ruining your physique, and your waist is still much smaller than average. For example, in the United States, the average man has a 41-inch waist. Yours doesn't ever need to get anywhere close to being that high. I'm not trying to hate on Sean in general, and I'm not even sure to what degree we disagree about this stuff. I'm just trying to address this idea that bulking is scary and we should be afraid of gaining fat, and if you make a mistake, then the consequences can be ruinous and you won't be able to fix them. I think it's better to think of bulking and life in general in the exact opposite way. There's a Robert Rodriguez quote I like. Sometimes the only way to cross the river is to slip on the first rock. If you aren't willing to slip on that first rock, then you won't ever make it across the river. That's the only way across. Toddlers are a really good example of this. The only way a toddler learns to walk is by trying, falling, getting back up, and then trying again. There's no other way to do it. Falling is what gives them the feedback they need to learn how to walk. There's no other way to learn how to walk. When parents try to prevent the falls, they prevent their children from learning. Sean is the perfect example of this. He made some mistakes, but he fixed them and he built himself an amazing physique and he became a successful fitness coach. His dirty dreamer bulk was part of that process that got him to where he is now. He's correct that you shouldn't do what he did, and he's wise to warn you about the slippery rock. But this sort of fear-based content, not specifically from him, I see it everywhere, is making people scared to cross the river. He's got it the wrong way around. Slipping on the rock didn't ruin his physique, it helped him cross the river. If you want help crossing the river, here's a free bulking kit with a full bulking workout routine and some of my favorite high-calorie, healthy bulking recipes. There's a QR code on the screen and I'll link it down below too. If you want a full bulking program with dozens more recipes, a full workout program, tutorial videos teaching every exercise, and personal individual feedback from us along the way, then I recommend our Bony to Beastly program. That's where all of these cool before and after photos come from. I'll show you how to bulk as slowly or aggressively as you want, in a way that suits your circumstances. Alright, that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, thank you even more. I hope to see you in the next one, or one of these older ones.